When the convergence of voice video data kind of happened, we saw proliferation of technologies like Zoom and others that rode on the backbone of that infrastructure, because without that, Zoom wouldn't have happened. And then COVID happened. A lot of the work went remote. Then streaming happened. So bundling something means very different today than bundling meant 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So if I'm a salesperson in the telco space selling solutions to business, what does my bundle look like today?
The technology, I don't want to say is irrelevant, but the technology has to be advantageous to the end user. There were times in the early days of my career that I added a ton of value, but I saved them money. There are an estimated 150 voice over IP companies in the channel today. I haven't heard this statistic in a long time, but I think there's something like 8,000 voice over IP companies in the US. Unless you add value, I'm not going to switch. But the value chain is changing on a daily basis. So if I'm buying local, long distance, and internet 20 years ago, all I needed was to save money. When I'm buying voice over IP or a UCaaS platform today, I need to know that there's a large language model or AI in the background, not just so I can say AI, but I want it to be specific to the industry, to the vertical that I serve. I'm a financial institution. Are you HIPAA compliant? Are you PCI compliant? Do you provide voice recordings? Can you redact people giving credit card numbers? So the bundles are more robust. They're far more technologically advanced, but they're driven by solutions. I wouldn't have made it today 20 years ago. And all I mean by that is I sold on price because that's what the buyer wanted. You can't sell on price. You can't even sell on a brand. You and I are old enough to remember the days of, and insert your name here. Nobody ever got fired for choosing IBM. I think that was the original. It was Lumen, it was AT&T, it was Verizon. There's very little of that anymore. There is still some, but when I walk into an office and I take a true consultative approach and I add value, not as a salesperson, but as a thought leader in the space that happens to have solutions, your best bet is to say, I don't have the right solution. Let me introduce you to someone that does. Then it does squeezing them into a product that's not a fit. The value chain is much greater today than it's ever been.